that we've kept going. Okay, we're recording. This is something that we do. We have to integrate in everything that we do in our youth services. This goes with planning. This goes with any type of business that we conduct within our youth services, and it really transcends past that. But really, our key in protecting youth is obvious. It's all in the wording. It's protecting our youth. Um, our agenda today. I know I said that we will be here for about an hour and a half, depending on what kind of discussions we have. Should be about an hour, maybe just shy of an hour, but we will have my introduction, youth protection overview. We'll talk about some risk management, some BOE, Department of Education private school updates on protecting youth, and some best practices and key takeaways. We'll also wrap it up with some questions. So I would love for everyone to be engaged. If you have any questions, by all means, you can stop me. I don't mind. I won't be hurt. We have our chat box, so go ahead and plug whatever you have on the chat box. We have, I believe Naomi is going to be moderating the chat box, or Benson will be. So let's have some engagement. And part of what we do, the, one of the biggest ways we can be better and we can be successful is through engagement. So a little bit about myself. I'm with the Eco Rotary of Kaka'ako. I'm a member there. I am your Youth Protection Officer, your YPO for our Rotary District. I've been the YPO since, in 2016. I took a little break to go and take care of some things at work, and then I came back to be your YPO in 2020 and now 2021. I started my work in youth services with our Honolulu Rotary Club in 2015 through 2017. We did a lot of great work there. I'm currently really busy, as if I didn't have much things to do, currently pursuing my master's in engineering. I've got 25 years of risk management experience in the private sector and government, and that's in general liability and occupational safety and health. I currently work for the Department of Defense. I'm appointed as their risk manager here at the Marine Corps base over in Kaneohe Bay, beautiful Kaneohe Bay. I've got two beautiful daughters, Sasha and Tiara. They're both adults, and my eldest daughter, Tiara, is a Rotarian, and my beautiful wife of 25 years, Camille. So that's a little bit about me. If I know there's a lot of familiar faces out there, and I do know a lot of you, a lot of new faces as well. So welcome. So keep our keiki safe. In the chat box, what does youth protection mean to you? Is this as subjective as we think it is? Anyone? No tolerance. Mark, great. Anyone else? We've got a whole bunch of you here. Free of harassment and abuse. Lee mentioned that is a wide question, absolutely. And I mentioned to you that it is subjective. Everyone has their own ideas. This is what makes youth protection very unique. It's multifaceted, as we mentioned earlier. Free of harassment, keeping kids safe physically and mentally, safety first, right? Being watchful, that the youth feel safe and comfortable, Kelsey, right? Watching out for kids. So we kind of have a real common watching out for the kids. Sandra. We have kind of a common perception of what youth protection is. Let's see. Raise awareness, that's a big one. Raise awareness. And the awareness comes with real good training and being able to communicate that training. All right. So a lot of good, there's no wrong or right answer on that either. So Sometimes it's take a look at the mirror and understand, what does youth protection mean? Is that a priority to you folks? We do a lot of great things when it comes to, see, I'm frozen here. We do a lot of great things when it comes to youth services. You know, sometimes we look at the activity or event and we want to do a lot of good things. Our youth services bring many opportunities to help shape our youth within our communities. We're mentors, we're teachers, we're trainers. We do good out there. Our mission in Rotary Club, it's in our DNA. We go out there, service above self. We go out there and we serve the community. So youth services plays a huge part in our community outreach, whether it's through mentoring, cleanups, or any event. It's obvious there's no shortage of work. We are a very, very, very busy organization. Here are some of the favorite pictures that I have throughout my stint with youth services. As you can see, a lot of smiley face, a lot of activities, a lot of things we do out there. You know, so do we put in our planning youth protection first? Do we talk about safety first? Do we take a look and analyze some of the risks that could happen when we're doing some of these activities? You know, some of these pictures over here, you see this volunteer working kind of close to the roadway. You know, do we assess that type of risk? These are things that, you know, and you know, we may sometimes put the blinders on because we are looking at the end result, the fact that we're doing the outreach, and we all have very good intentions when we do these events. So our Rotary Youth Protection Guide. So where do we start, right? Well, it starts right here, our Rotary Youth Protection Guide. The section here you can find in our, I put the link to the website, but you can find it on our D5000 webpage. You can also just Google Rotary Protection Guide. If you go on our webpage, you'll actually find the more current, or the current one. But you utilize the Rotary Youth Protection Guide for guidance in ensuring that your club is compliant with the standards. This is an excellent document that won't just steer your program in the right direction, but it'll definitely help you to be compliant with your program. This guide should be printed and used for initial or refresher training. Whenever you have new volunteers, you want to go through this guide. This guide's been pretty invaluable for me personally. It's given me some guidance on what to do. It talks about how to respond to certain things. It talks about what happens during an allegation. A lot of these things that I talk to you about today, you may forget tomorrow. If I was to do a test tomorrow, not to say I don't have confidence in everybody, maybe if I took the same test, I'd fail, but you know, it's all about knowing where to get that information from, and how to be resourceful. This is an excellent resource when it comes to youth protection. Oh, here you go. The guide can be found online in the D5000 website under the youth services page. So very, very important to know where to get that. As a best practice, I like to print that out. It's about, not too long, it's about 50 pages, but it's very in-depth. It has a lot of great information on there. Another wonderful, wonderful, wonderful resource is our RI District 5000 Policy Manual. And this manual, you also find the compliance checklist, or the compliance agreement form that we're going to have you acknowledge. As you can see, this is the most current policy manual, May 16th, 2021. I would suggest that everyone get familiar with this. Has a lot of great information. This is I like to call this your standard operating procedures. It really gives you a great idea of what to do. If you have any questions or it'll definitely clarify for you. The worst thing that we want to do is, and I'm not saying that it's really bad, is it's one of those things where if you train somebody verbally, and you have 10 people and you start with one person and you talk with that person, and by the time you get to the 10th person, everything's all skewed. This Rotary International Policy Manual is a great guide. It's really our standard operating procedures when it comes to all things. There's a great section on youth protection on there. So please use this manual. Use it as your governing document for local policy. This guide, again, should be printed and used for an initial or refresher training. Now, just be mindful that there's a lot of pages to this, but it's a great document to just have and use for your training. Again, the guide can be found in the D5000 website. All right. So awareness and prevention. Our statement of conduct for working with youth, and this is not just our localized statement of conduct. This is Rotary International statement of conduct for those working with youth. And I'm going to read this. It's Rotary International strives to create and maintain a safe environment for all youth who participate in Rotary activities. To the best of their ability, Rotarians, Rotarian spouses, and partners and other volunteers must safeguard the children and young people with whom they come into contact and protect them from physical, sexual, and psychological abuse. All right, that's a very important statement. It's one that when I asked you earlier and you folks put in the chat box, what does youth protection mean to you? You folks all basically touched upon that. Everyone here knows that your role in all of this is to protect and safeguard children. And one of the important aspects of youth protection is when you take a look at that last sentence right there, or the last part of it, it says, protect them from physical, sexual, and psychological abuse. Now, physical abuse, that's obvious. Sexual abuse, absolutely. There's some safeguards against that, but psychological abuse, we're not psychologists, but we do have a lot of experience here. Most of us, in fact, most of us have kids or have already dealt with or worked with youth. It's not about being a psychologist or an expert at psychological abuse, but it's about understanding and seeing some of the signs that someone is psychologically abused. And so that's where that comes from. This is our core value in youth protection. So whenever you train someone, when you're training or when you're talking to volunteers or people, other chair members, please pass a statement of conduct off to them. It's very important. It really sets a tone on what we do as this part of the organization. So abuse and harassment of young people can definitely go unaddressed when adults fail to recognize them. So it's about understanding some key points or what to look for. Youth protection depends on awareness of the possibility of abuse and harassment and vigilant in guarding against it. Some people, definitely in some cultures, it's like you won't, they tell you, mind your own business, don't worry about them. We as an organization cannot have that mindset. If we are going to work with youth, if we're going to have community outreach with youth, if we're going to mentor youth, we have to be able to address these things and call them out as they come. I'm going to so recognizing some of the abuse and harassment, be observant, really know the youth that you work with. This is particularly, I don't want to say easy, but it makes it a little bit easier when you're dealing with the same kids all the time. But being aware of the signs of abuse and harassment. Again, you can find this on the Rotary Youth Protection Guide. They give some excellent key points on what to look for. Be observant. When a youth is known to be cheery and suddenly becomes detached, that may be a sign of a problem. So, for instance, if you're out and you're doing some kind of activity or event, and everyone's engaged, every child is engaged in your group, and suddenly after lunch, you have a child who's detached or not as engaging when maybe an hour before that they were. You want to ask the questions, don't assume. You want to ask and listen. It's okay to want to find out what's going on. Don't overanalyze, but just be aware. Sometimes changes of behavior might be just due to homesickness, cultural adjustment, etc. So it's you have to look for that happy medium, not have to keep peering. Sometimes, especially children, they put defensive blocks up and they will not be as willing to share anything with you. But sometimes just asking them, is everything okay? Notice that you're not, did anyone say anything? Or just ask the questions. And that will definitely, hopefully help. So leadership position and positions of responsibility. This is very important. It's us understanding what our roles are in the organization. You're not just going to be the youth services chair and not understand what your role is in the organization. You're not going to interact and know without knowing what your role is. So part of that is training. You folks as program chairs or even volunteers that are online right now, ask those questions. What am I here for? I know I know I'm heading the Interact Club, but what does that entail of me? And in every circumstance, in every situation, we always have to have that conversation of, well, we're here. Number one, you state what your role is, but we also want to integrate the youth protection piece to that. So youth services mentors should be a resource for each other. Teaching training, again, is essential for success, and we can't say our program is robust without a good training program. So being able to train everyone in their roles, being able to train everyone in youth protection prior to them going out there and executing. So club presidents, club program chairs, other club officers have an overall responsibility for operating, coordinating club youth activities, to include integrating youth protection policies. So what I really mean by that is, if you are going to go plan a beach cleanup and you're going to have youth from a certain school come out there, you have to integrate the youth protection policies. How many adults are going to be there? And it really ties into risk management. And we'll talk a little bit about that later. But planning, really planning. What happens when there's inclement weather? Are we going to? Is there a contingency plan? Who's picking up kids afterwards? Our children volunteers afterwards? Do we have a roster of parents? You have to really start integrating youth protection into our business and really understanding what risks can be mitigated and how to mitigate those risks. Hopefully that's not too boring for you folks. This is really exciting stuff for me as a risk manager. But club executives should know all Rotary and district youth protection policies. And this really goes back to the guidance we have, the guides that we have. They're excellent resources. And I would definitely start with opening those up. Implement required training. You folks are all here. You folks are here today on a Saturday listening to me talk about youth protection. That's part of one of the requirements. Screening, making sure that we implement good screening for our volunteers, understanding who we have working for us, not just because we get to fill that spot with someone. We got to really truly vet our people. Program logistics, how are we going to get people there? Where's the bathrooms? Do we have water? Is it a hot area? What's the weather going to be like? And really tie all that in with our risk management procedures, taking a look at that. How do we mitigate that risk to an acceptable level? That's really what it all boils down to. And are we willing to accept that risk? That's another question. So a lot of different questions that we have to ask prior to going on and doing an activity. Engage regularly with youth program participants to get feedback on programs. Our participants are volunteers. We want to ask them, hey, so how did it go that day? Or we want to ask the participants, what did you think about the our activity today? How can we make it better? Because you're going to get a lot of great feedback that way. And so feedback is really important when we formulate our plan for next time. You might have some errors that we need corrected, and that we didn't see as administrators. And so we need to really know that data so that we can come up and formulate a better plan for next time. This is really important. Report all allegations of abuse, harassment, and other crises to your youth protection officer, who will in turn disseminate information to proper district level leaders. So utilize the 5 W's and ensure that one person gathers the facts and reports this right away. This is very important to us because a lot of information gets convoluted, it gets cloudy when there's many people bringing in information. I have a great example, and this is just really live. As you can see, I'm here at work today at the Marine Corps base. We had a situation today, and I was called into work at about 5 a.m. because we had a situation where an individual, and I'll spare the gory details, but got caught in a piece of machinery. That person's in the hospital right now. Can't really go into much detail, but I've had about close to 8 to 10 people calling and reporting at the same time. So if you can only imagine one person getting different sides of the stories, not all factual, it can get pretty frustrating. It really not just dilutes the reporting, but it clouds everything. So one thing that I would ask is that when you're training people on reporting, one POC, one point of contact should get all that information and bubble that up to me, and I will bring that over. I'll gather all the facts and turn that into our district level leaders. So yeah, that should be a very easy one. And 5 W's, if you folks don't know, I'm sure all of you know what those are: the who, what, when, where, whys. Those are some great guidance, some great bullets to understand, and that's really all we need to know. Not too much information and not too detailed. Just the 5 W's.
Peter, can I make a comment?
Yes, absolutely.
If something happens, you should tell everyone, do not try to handle it yourself. You can magnify your problem worse. Talk to your folks first. Do not talk to any other outside sources, and you get blown out of proportion.
Absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up. That's an important key, and it's understanding. And we call it, I try to keep away from the word media relations, but it's all relations. We want to keep the information. We want to keep it very. We're sensitive to the situation. We're sensitive to all individuals that are involved with the situation. There's some privacy concerns, obviously, but the worst thing that we want is to give somebody the wrong information. Now, when dealing with children, the one thing that is very apparent when a situation occurs is When parents come in and ask, what happened? You were with my child. I need to know what happened. Um, One of the best practices, now I cannot speak for every situation because every situation is different. It's how you react to that situation. And proper training will help. But one of the key things, or one of the things that I suggest to people is to gather the information, right? Let the advisor know, because when you're dealing with children, you have an advisor somewhere. If it's a school interact, you have an interact advisor. Let that person know this is what happened. And then guide the parent or whoever's asking to that advisor, because that advisor really is the liaison between the school or the that organization. And then also in any other communication that you definitely copy me on that so I can let our leadership know. I don't know if that, I know that wasn't a question, that was just a statement, but it's a very real statement. Things happen. We just want to be very sensitive to the feedback that we give. And yeah, anything else? That was a great comment. You know, one thing that I wanted to mention, and this really ties into risk management, and we all saw and the media coverage on that terrible incident that occurred on Oahu, where one of the schools decided to deviate from their normal plans and bring a child on a kayak without proper planning. And I don't know if everybody is aware of that, but there was a school of a function that went on, and without doing much planning, they decided that they're going to do something else, and without going through, you know, the whole risk analysis stage. When the child and the volunteer went out into the ocean, water was very deep. The water was very rough. They didn't have any safety equipment such as life vests. The canoe, or not the canoe, but the kayak flipped over, and both the volunteer and the child perished. Such a tragic situation. I would hope that that never happens to us, and it should never happen to us, because what we do here in youth protection, what we do in youth services is what we plan, and planning is key to all we do. We don't deviate from the plans, and if we have to deviate from the plans, there's got to be a contingency plan to that. I can't express that enough. I use that in many of the examples, because if anything can go wrong, it will go wrong, and so we want to definitely be mindful of the things that we do and make sure that, number one, we're planning. It's funny, and I know I'm rambling on, but we talk about safety first, and safety first in all we do. Safety first, you know. But is safety truly first? You know, we got to take a look at that. Sometimes we have to look in the mirror and say, you know, are we truly implementing the right steps when we're planning these events? You know, I use this example as well, and this is just off of the contracting side over here in government. I say, because I review a lot of the contracts that come through, government contracts, and I say, well, if safety is truly first, why is the first thing that our contractors do try to outbid themselves? Money is first here, it seems, you know. And so, and that's just kind of a off the tangent subject here, but if we truly want to protect our youth, let's integrate a lot of our planning, youth protection, into the planning. It's key. It's key to reducing a lot of our risk and exposure. So, any questions? I think we're good, huh? I beat that down pretty well. Background checks is a hot topic. It's been a hot topic for the last year or so. But our background checks are conducted by IntelliCorp, and A lot of people come to me and ask me, Peter, why do we have to go through IntelliCorp? And because it's a reputable organization. They're committed to conducting thorough background checks. And really importantly, they keep your information safe. And that's what we care about. We care about the privacy and the fact that information is safeguarded. So we're not going to go and use any other company that not a reputable company at least. A lot of Rotarians have come back to me saying that, Peter, I already have a background check with my employer. I have a, whatever the case may be, secret clearance or classified clearance, and that's fine. But for our purposes, we want to make sure that we are standardized across the board. So utilize IntelliCorp. Let's go ahead and make sure that we are standardized when it comes to that. So how do we obtain a background check? Well, easy. Natasha Claren. Email her, NatashaClaren777@gmail.com. I had to make sure that I got that right because I got that wrong the last time. But NatashaClaren777@gmail.com. And all she needs is the following info. She needs her name, email address, home zip code, city, and county. So if you're in Honolulu, our county is Honolulu. If I'm living in Kaneohe, my county is still Honolulu. If you're living in Lanai, it's Maui County, I believe, so on and so forth. Your name, make sure that's your real name, not your nickname. Just make sure that it's your full legal name. And then you wait for an email invitation from myself, the YPO at RotaryD5000.org. So YPO is Youth Protection Officer. So when you get that email invitation, it'll have a link that takes you straight to IntelliCorp's website. Fill out that information, follow instructions, submitting your information, paying online. So the fee, the company says the fee is between $13.60 to $19. Just assume that it's $19 because I've never seen it at $13.60, or I've never seen it under 19 bucks. It's always going to be about $19, and it's because of the thoroughness that they go through on the background check. A lot of Rotarians, a lot of volunteers asked me, Peter, do I have to pay this on my own pocket? It depends on your club. Your club may allow you to use their funds for the background check. They may reimburse you for that, or they may just say, we don't have money in the budget. I'm just saying that, but that's what they may say. We allow the clubs have the autonomy to come up with that. So good for 2 years. Background checks are needed for any adult volunteer working for youth. I had somebody come up to me and say, hey, Peter, I got somebody who's 60 years old. They're not, IntelliCorp's not accepting them. I said, it's because they're 16 years old. It has to be an adult. So anyone over 18 has to have a background check. Any volunteer awaiting results of a background check, or like a one-time volunteer or volunteer minor, should be accompanied at all times during the event by a vetted volunteer. Okay, so that's important. I had a question whether or not my wife is coming to volunteer. She's never going to volunteer again. She's just doing this one-time thing just to help us out. Well, your wife has to be vetted through the club, absolutely, your spouse, but it might not be necessary for her to get a background check, but she just needs to be supervised, and she cannot be alone with children. Basically, that's the rule on that. Any questions on background checks? All right, so our youth protection procedures, many procedures out there. The great thing is once you follow the guidance on the district Rotary Youth Protection Guide, that is the roadmap. You have certain demographics will require certain things. District level policies and procedures that comply with Rotary's Code of Conduct and Rotary Statement of Conduct for working with youth. It all has to be aligned. It all has to be aligned. Some of the the major key points on that is volunteer selection and screening. Very important. Like I said earlier, you folks all need to know who's working for you. Utilize a youth program volunteer application form. It's found in the Youth Services website. Do an interview, reference checks, criminal background checks, and with youth exchange, host families for youth exchange, conduct home visits. That's very important. But when you take a look at whether or not you are having somebody work with you, work in your program, you really want to know who they are. You really want to ask questions. An application form is great. Not everybody uses an application form. I would suggest that we come up with sort of a volunteer application form for your clubs, and that's just so that you can go ahead and screen them very well. We want to ask people the questions, and we want to ask the questions, and we want to pay careful attention when we encounter references or encounter people that are very overly zealous of working with youth. And I have to be careful when I say that, because people get excited when they volunteer. But we want to just ask those questions, especially when they're asking, well, I only want to work with boys, or I only want to work with girls. I only want to work with kids that are 16 years old. I don't want to say that should send out flags, but they should come up with follow-up questions like, why do you feel that you should only work now? Our youth interact clubs, have a range between 13 and 17. Why only 16? You want to ask the questions, and it's sometimes asking the questions become uncomfortable, but doing so emphasizes that your club takes abuse and harassment very seriously. So it's one of those important key points that I'd say is very necessary. Ask the questions. Reference checks are important. I would say do between 1 and 3 reference checks. Give a call. Sometimes you'll get a it hasn't happened with me at Rotary, but it's happened to me outside in a different organization where I did a reference check on a volunteer, and that reference didn't want to answer any questions. So it kind of raised flags for me, and some of the tone in the reference's voice. Oh, well, yeah, no, I don't want to answer any questions. It for me, it kind of raised some flags. And so we want to just kind of be mindful of that. We want to vet our people very well. We want to understand who we have working with our youth. Volunteer training, training specific to the program roles. When I say that, I mean, if you have somebody that is chairing Interact or working with Interact clubs, we want to make sure that your staff or your volunteers are trained towards that. If you're doing beach cleanups, train your individuals in specifically what to do during the beach cleanups. They have to, like what we mentioned before, they have to know their roles, right? Include abuse, harassment, and crisis prevention information. Again, you'll find that in the Rotary Youth Protection Guide. A lot of great information on there, but you want to recognize the signs. We're not experts at these things, but we want to recognize the signs and ask questions when we do come across that. Right. So youth protection, technology. Technology is a big deal. There's not a lot of information out there when it comes to there is a lot of information out there globally, but as far as the Rotary Club and our RI international policies, there's not a lot. And so one of the things that we want to make sure is that, we're using the same type of safeguards or the same processes, some of the same processes as much as possible in ensuring that our youth is safe. This brings a different dynamic to keeping them safe. Zoom meetings or similar platforms are common. Be aware of storing information or pictures or youth. especially on a personal computer. That's difficult to do, very difficult to do. You don't know who's storing what. You want to be aware of who's on the Zoom conferences. You don't want to invite people into those Zoom conferences that you first don't know about. That's very important. So each program should consider potential risks and develop policies to address them. Taking a look and coming up with individual club policies. If your thing is to have Zoom meetings, then by all means, that's good for you. But just make sure that we are going through some of the proper steps and have things documented. Some of the questions to consider for virtual or online programs. What safeguards are in place to ensure that an adult will not have an opportunity to interact one-on-one privately with a minor, both digitally or in person. Any outside meetings outside of the Zoom. What measures will the program take to ensure that a safe online environment for the minor participants? For example, preventing uninvited participants, managing cyberbullying, statement about recording and screenshots, maybe have a statement about sharing of personal information. How will the program manage communication between authorized adults and minor participants while staying within our Rotary Code of Conduct, both during and outside? So that's really important. Some of the questions that we have to ask. Any questions on this? Hopefully we're coming to the end of a lot of our virtual. It doesn't really feel like it though. We're doing a Zoom conference right now. But this is really important, especially when a lot of our schools will still not allow face-to-face or in-person mentoring. We still have to utilize technology. So it's really important that we still safeguard our youth.
Peter, this is Alan Okinaka from Kilo Bay.
Hey, Alan.
Hi, this is a question I've been asking for 10 years now as far as youth protection goes. We ran the RILA program up over here, and that was one of my major concerns. And we filled out those affidavits and everything like that. But filling it out, there's also a privacy thing that we're concerned about. So if a person does a background check, and how do we know? I mean, how do we manage this? You won't know whether a person has a problem with working with youths or is a predator, and because of privacy. So, what good is having this information if it's not going to allow us to manage the personnel that work with the youths?
Well, if a background check does come back of concern, that information will go to leadership. That person won't be able to volunteer.
So who will know? If I ran RILA for that period, will I know that if this person volunteers, I will have to reject him?
Yes, absolutely. If that person does not pass their background check, they will not be allowed to work with youth. And
no, but will I know? Will I, as the person running the camp, for instance, and I'm coordinating all the volunteers and everything like that, somebody will tell me this person is not allowed to work with youth, so you have to reject them? Because that was a major concern on privacy, that if that information was given to me, we're violating the person's privacy.
Right. No, absolutely. Well, you're not violating the person's privacy. You are leading an organization. It's a violation of that person's privacy when it is made known to everyone, when it's posted for everyone to see. Now, within the organization, now Alan, I'm sorry, what is your position with youth services?
I'm not involved with the youth services. I'm not a director or whatever with youth services right now, but I did that for about 3-4 years in the past.
Right. Right. So the people that would be privy to that information will be your club president. They will understand, well, they will know what information comes to them, who can work with the youth, who did not pass the background check. And really what that happens from then is whether or not your president will let the board know, or whether or not they will let just the youth services chair know. Nevertheless, it's a need to know basis. And if you're running, or if you're leading the organization or the activity, you'll be privy to that knowledge. Other than that, it's a need to know. And you're absolutely right. The sensitivity, the confidentiality plays a major role in this, but it's all about keeping that information to those that actually need it. But yes, and that's the whole reason for the background checks, is to establish that protocol, to understand who can actually work with children. And when they take a look at the background checks, they look at criminal activity, they look at any history of abuse, whether or not it's family abuse, aggression, anything that had been criminally established. Sometimes people will pass a background check because they have been arrested. Hello? I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Peter.
So one of the more important things that we have, or one of the major safeguards that we have, is through our interview process, our vetting process. We want to make sure that, a lot of people can fall through the cracks. The background check isn't the catch-all. It isn't 100%. You may have someone out there that's doing criminal activity that has never been caught. We want to make sure that we're protecting our youth. This is kind of it's a very broad, and I think we mentioned that earlier during the chat box when I said, what does youth protection mean to you? It is a broad statement. It truly is. It's what we do as an organization to reduce that risk, to reduce the risk of someone infiltrating our ranks and doing bad things. And that's understanding who our people are. The background check is one thing. We definitely have to keep that information safeguarded. And we don't want to spread rumors, or we don't want to talk about people, and we don't want to get the juicy details and tell someone else. That's not doing service, and that's not part of of who we are as an organization. I don't know if that answers your question or not, but what I do know is if a background check does come up positive, or does come up with some flags, your leadership will know, and they will disseminate that information accordingly with confidentiality in mind.
Hey, Peter,
Sir.
can I just ask a follow-up on privacy?
Yes.
Don't we need to disclose that we're doing a background check to the individual that's trying to volunteer? Isn't that a infringement on the person's privacy if we just go ahead and do a background check without them knowing about it?
Well, we don't. What happens in a background check is that person fills out the form and acknowledges that they are being background checked. When you're going through the interview process, you allow them and you ask them the questions, and if you do, which I highly recommend you do, reference checks, they will be aware of, because they're providing you with the references.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're fully aware. We don't do background checks on people without them fully knowing.
Okay, so they, one way or another, they have to know about it.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Peter,
So, go ahead.
this is Susan from Ala Moana Rotary.
Hi,
A
Susan.
follow-up to that would be, as Interact advisors, we don't need to know that information, but we are going to assume that anybody that Rotary sends to help us, chaperoning or interacting, whatever, that they are cleared knowing that Rotary has a background protection program or a background check program.
Absolutely,
So-
and absolutely, and thanks for putting that in there. We all work with youth. When I go out and volunteer, you know, I'm background checked. I'm going in with the confidence knowing that the person next to me has been background checked, so that, you know, when they are with their youth or dealing with their kids or doing their activities, I know in the back of my mind that, you know, our group here is fully vetted. We're a good group here. So that's great point, Susan. I appreciate you bringing that up.
Hey, Peter, this is Ryan,
Hey, Ryan.
your district chair. But I think the point maybe is that it's up to the club's boards, though, right, to identify who needs to be background checked within their clubs. But at the district level, I think anyone who Rotary District 5000 sends your way is going to be have gone through the background check process. That's the policy, right? I think.
Absolutely, that is the policy. So the policy states anyone dealing or volunteering with youth has to have a background check. But we have realized that you have your one-offs, you have your spouse that may want to volunteer at one time and never volunteers again, or you have somebody coming in from a friend that wants to volunteer with a beach cleanup, but we do have to add safeguards. We don't just allow them to come in here. We have to be able to ensure that we're communicating that and letting our organization and letting our staff know that, look, you know what, I got so-and-so coming in. He's going to help us with the beach cleanup. Do you think that's okay? Well, yeah, sure. That person will not be able to interact with children directly, but he will be supervised at all times. He or she will be supervised and accompanied at all times. So there's some safeguards in place for that. But you're right, Ryan. Everyone, per the policy, has to be background checked. Is that feasible for one time? Do I have the background check takes about anywhere between 6 to 8 weeks to come back, sometimes earlier, sometimes a little longer. If you have a volunteer that, I got a beach cleanup next week, is it feasible or is it even possible for that to come back right away? That's when you have to add the safeguards. Let's do a reference check, or let's find out who really this person is and ask those questions. I think that's important. The background check should complement everything else we do in the vetting process. It shouldn't be the catch-all.
Sure. I think I just wanted to remind everyone here, as your district youth service chair and Peter as the youth protection chair, every club needs to make sure that they're sending anyone that's working with youth to the background check process. I think that's on the club's prerogative here to make sure that that's occurring. And I will continue to remind your youth service chairs at every monthly meeting to be doing that.
Thank you, Ryan. Yes,
Peter, this is Alan again. I'm pretty sure that District 5000 Youth Protection Policy, or the book that you had earlier, has all the policies. Could I ask if we could have the procedural information written in there such that, we'll know who will get this information, under what situation they will disseminate whatever information to whoever, things like this. When I talk about RYLA, for instance, there's about 30 or 40 Rotarians that get involved. The people that meet the bus, that the kids all get together, and then we have the bus ride up to the camp. At the camp, we have various people that come in and do different exercises and games and whatever. And then we close down. There's a whole bunch of people involved, and to interview all of them with the understanding that they had a background check might not be possible. So I'm more on prevention. I don't want the situation to happen where there was a person that shouldn't be there, And so what I did when I was responsible for logistics was that I set up a policy that no Rotarian will accompany a youth alone to wherever. You know, for instance, they said, I forgot my jacket, I need it. 2 Rotarians have to go with that youth. And that's mainly because, you know, we thought that if we have 2 people there, they'll, you know, if one of them is, I don't know how to describe the person that shouldn't be there. But anyway, with 2 Rotarians, they'll check on each other. And this is mainly because we didn't have a procedure. I kept on asking the question, you know, what do we do? How do we do this? We did the affidavit. Who do we know has done the affidavit? There's a lot of questions like that that gets in the way. And so at the end, we just said, okay, every time there's a youth that needs to go somewhere for whatever reason, 2 Rotarians have to go with that person.
Absolutely. Alan, you brought a good point there, and I appreciate your input. You know, our district level, our Rotary International, you know, policies and procedures may seem a little bit broad in certain key points. They may not answer every single situation, and that's really what's unique with us here in youth protection, or even youth services for that. My suggestion to you, and what's great about what we do here in Rotary, is that depending on the demographics, depending on the clubs have the autonomy to go ahead and make those decisions, such as, I will only allow 2 Rotarians to escort 1 child back where, you know, if they need to get a jacket or whatever. If they need to use the restroom, 2 Rotarians will escort them and stay outside of the restroom. You know, whether or not one person clears the restroom, make sure no one's in there, you know, whatever the case may be, the rules and policies, if your club wants to be a little bit more stringent in those policies, then that's fine. That's up to the club. And that's what makes our clubs very unique, is that we're able to go ahead, depending on where we're at, you know, depending on our demographic, depending on our certain situation, depending on the type of event, you know, are able to make those decisions. You know, if we're doing a beach cleanup for instance, and the next bathroom is, you know, 100 yards away, maybe it would be to the youth protection advantage to have 2 Rotarians escort that 1 student, you know. So these are things that when we're doing our planning phases, when we're talking in our board meetings, these are things that we have to bring up. So local policy, absolutely. Policy memos within the organization, within the club. And these are things that we want to share amongst each other in our youth services group. Because if you folks come across a situation, we would like to know, because we may come across that situation at one point or the other. So sharing that information with us will only make us better. But I really appreciate you definitely bringing that up.
Peter?
Yes.
Peter, this is Ray Paler from Kauai,
Sir.
West Kauai Rotary, and I'm the youth coordinator for Kauai proper. Anyway, just to inject the thought, I have been involved with the Boy Scouts of America, and we have a written policy of whenever there is a child or a scout involved, no adult can be alone with them. It's always like the policy is too deep, as they call it. There's always going to be another adult scout, authorized scouting person with the child, not just one. So I think what I'm getting at is it's the policy of the condition of too deep. You always have 2 people with a minor.
So like we don't have a policy such as that. What we want to do is to enable our program chairs, our leadership within the organization, to make those decisions. And those decisions really come to with planning. So for example, ratios have been a very, very hot topic lately. How many kids am I allowed to supervise at one time? There's nothing that says you need 4 people per one, you need 3 people per one. But what happens when one of those students has to go and use the restroom? You all go and walk them to the restroom. Or what happens when my mom says we have to meet at this location, she's picking me up here. Do you allow 2 Rotarians to watch that one person, that one student? That's where the background check and the vetting process comes into play. If you as an organization, you as a club find it necessary to do that, then that is your decision. If that is your policy in youth protection, absolutely. I know that the Boy Scouts has a more stringent policy when it comes to that. It's a blanketed policy. But for us here at Rotary, we still want to conduct the right safeguards. We also want to make sure that we're doing the right thing. Every situation is different. We don't have as many volunteers sometimes. We want to be smart with what we do. We also want to plan, and that's key to all of this. But there is, to me, in my mind, there is no such thing as too deep in protecting our kids. They're our biggest assets. We have the responsibility, fiduciary responsibility. We have a duty to protect them. And so if we as a club decide that, you know what, we're going to go all out here and have 2 background checked adults watching one child, then that's your policy and that's your procedure. So depending on the demographic, it might warrant that. But what I'm saying is our biggest thing right here for us in what we do is making sure that we're justified and feasible in what we do. We want to do things that make sense. We want to make sure that, you know, we are still providing really the whole purpose of why we're there. You know, when we go out and we're painting, painting planter boxes for a youth facility, we bring the kids out there. That's what we're there for. We want to integrate the youth protection policy. I don't want to say we want to lock everything down, but we want to be mindful of the inherent risks. But for me, in my mind, and for us, we should always think that you know, there's nothing too great than some of the safeguards. You know, there's nothing too deep that we can go. I don't know if that makes sense. I know I'm skating the subject a little bit, but this goes back to what we said earlier. You know, youth protection is very multifaceted. There's many different things that develop as we go, but it's how prepared we are, how well trained we are, that will determine the outcome. All right. Some good hot topic stuff. Anyone else? That was online safety.
Yes, Peter,
Yes.
this is Elida from Volcano
Hi.
Rotary Club. Hi, thank you for what you're doing.
Oh, thank you for what you do.
I'm seeing a few messages coming across about this. Now, one thing I'm keep wondering about, and I know that my Rotary Club will be asking me a lot about this, is the fact that we do reading in about 3 to 4 elementary schools and in the kindergarten classes. And then we also do the dictionary program like many others do in our 3rd grade classes. And we have 3, maybe 4 schools next year to do this. And we have volunteers that join us, and the volunteer would always be, well, I shouldn't say always, mostly with the Rotary member, but we are granted by the DOE to be on campus. And they are teachers in the classroom with the, say, the reader or the presenter. And we do a little program with the kids. So what my understanding is and what you're saying is that for a one-time type situation where a friend is visiting a Rotarian and they happen to be a retired elementary school teacher or whatever, they can go ahead and be supervised and be able to do the reading or the program in the school when the teacher is there with the children. Is that so?
Absolutely, absolutely. As
Okay.
long as they are, as long as they still follow DOE protocol. Now, DOE has a code of conduct that they have for contractors, employees, volunteers, as long as they're following that protocol. Now, is this a Rotary function?
Yes.
Okay, so as a Rotary function, you would still be mandated to go through a vetting process. We gotta, if it's a one-time person coming to visit, we want to make sure that first you communicate that with your you know, your youth chairs, even bringing it up to your president, and maybe even bringing it up to Ryan or myself and saying, look, you know, we have a volunteer that's coming in, he's coming from New York or wherever, and he's coming to volunteer and he's going to read to kids. And we're going to ask those questions, you know, are they going to be alone with kids? You know, have they worked with kids before? How well do you know this person? You know, we can ask those questions until we're comfortable. But one of the things with, you know, one of the major sticking points to that is making sure that that adult stays supervised with a vetted volunteer. When I say vetted volunteer, a volunteer that has gone through the background check.
Hey, Peter.
Yes.
Peter, we have a really hard stop at 10 o'clock. The HRYF has a Zoom. So
Yes.
we've got a whole bunch. We've got a whole bunch of questions in the chat. So I wonder if you could just finish your presentation and then we can go to the questions.
Yes,
And then-
absolutely.
And then if people have situations they want to put in the chat, we can answer them on a FAQ on an email afterwards.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, this is very exciting stuff and I'm glad everyone's engaged. So let's run to one of my favorite things, which is risk management. And the purpose of risk management is to encourage our youth services, consider how they will provide for the safety of youth. So it's all about planning, how you will mitigate through some of those risks. How are you going to reduce some of those risks so that it is acceptable to move forward? So recognizing the unique challenges are faced by minors, put together some points to consider when developing a risk management plan specific to safety of the youth involved with our club's program. So consider what risks are involved and put plans into place to eliminate that risk or to reduce that risk to an acceptable level. But the one question that we should all ask, does the risk outweigh the benefit? And if it does outweigh the benefit, then why are we even considering it? And that's just to be blunt. If we are planning a kayaking event out in Kualoa or wherever, and it is the weather, we've got a tropical cyclone or tropical storm, you know, 2,000 miles away, that's going to bring inclement weather. Why are we going to risk bringing our children out there? These are some of the questions that we have to ask ourselves during the planning stages. So some of the risks associated with youth programs, risk has a devastating downside. You know, it's never positive. When you're exposing people, children, you know, our fellow volunteers, our Rotarians, to risk, there's never anything that's good. Financial loss, we look at financial loss, whether or not it's paying the bills, whether or not it's any civil liability, reputational harm, our branding. We protect our beloved Rotary Club. We have a positive reputation within the community. What happens when there's something that goes really bad? People know about it and people talk about it, and that becomes your brand after a long. It's hard to recover from that type of harm. And litigation, everybody knows we live in a litigious society, so we want to make sure that we are protecting ourselves and our organization. All right, so some in risk management, some questions to consider for in-person events. So in the case that we go in person, we have some volunteering stuff, events that we do, we want to take a look at what is the layout of the location, space where the program is being held. Is there anything in that space that could pose a danger to minors? Oh, we have a beach cleanup at Spitting Caves. Well, it's a very bad traversed area. It's rocky, it's wet. There's a chance for children to get swept in. Is that a good place to have an event? So you have to consider the location and space. Take a look at historical information. Take a look at whatever data that you can pull to take and analyze the space that you're doing the program in, the volunteering event. How will the program ensure that the minor is not left alone at any time with an adult? We want to take a look at that. Is there restroom areas? How far are the restroom areas? Is there any time where a minor may be left alone? What are the supervisory ratios? And these are things that we talked about earlier. Well, we're going to have a beach cleanup, but Peter, you're in charge of 4 kids. Here you go. That's established. And when you take a look at that, you have to consider age. I will watching 4 6-year-olds be as will reduce some of the risk of harm or any problems that may come up, rather than watching a 4 16-year-olds or 17-year-olds. So these are things that you have to take a look at. Is the program in a public place? What measures will you take to supervise minor participants? Case in point, we do, like a food drive where people come in and donate food, or we're out there serving food to the hungry. We've got people coming in from all angles, all areas. What are we doing as an organization of this event, to make sure that proper measures are taken in place to supervise these minor volunteers, youth volunteers, I should say. How will the program handle volunteer staff that are not authorized adults, but participate in the program on a temporary basis? Again, bringing up the fact that I have a one-time volunteer here, he's coming to help us. We need to be able to address these or have a plan to handle these situations. It might not be a situation at all, but it might be something that we have to go and take a look at. Do we want to vet them through an interview process? Do we want to, how do we want to handle this type of situation? How will minors be dropped off or a youth be dropped off and picked up? Will there be a list of authorized people to be picked up? Where are the check-in, check-out processes? Is there going to be one designated area for pickup? What happens when you have those one-offs where a parent says, no, I need to pick them up over here? Or what happens when you have a last-minute change? Hey, I have my neighbor picking up so-and-so. How will you as an organization react to that? These are things that you have to plan for when you plan for an event. So these are risk management type scenarios that you have to ask yourself when you're doing an analysis. And it really comes down to planning and being prepared for the worst scenario. That will help you. That will help your group. All right, moving along. So this is kind of, again, another hot topic. Updates to BOE, Board of Education, DOE, Department of Education, and private school policies. I came here to tell you that I don't have anything. And I know that's bad. I've been in contact for the last 2 weeks with the Department of Education, and it hasn't been, I haven't gotten a lot of the answers that we need. So I have a contact there. His name is Mark Behrens. He is the lead for safety and security when it comes to the DOE. He is specific to DOE. He can answer a lot of the questions, but has referred me to their statement of conduct, the code of conduct document. The Board of Education and DOE has not put out any type of updates when it comes to volunteers. they enable every school principal to come up with their own localized policies. So if you have a Interact group over at Farrington High School, their policies may be different than those at McKinley High School. Same thing goes for private schools. So per the DOE, currently all rules and regulations apply. Policies are status quo, and that's exactly what they told me. Their policy dates back to 2016, so it still applies, even through COVID. Each school principal can be contacted to provide specific guidance to what school has enacted in its local policy, meaning you as a volunteer may be allowed to a certain school to go and do some outreach, to do some volunteer or some mentoring. You know, and I'm picking on Farrington High School. That just comes to mind. But if you go to McKinley, you may not be able to, or vice versa. I'm just bringing those schools up. But every school has a different policy when it comes to their schools and responsibility. Although DOE has not mandated restrictions on volunteering, the individual school may have. So individual schools may be a little bit more stringent in what they have as their policies. They may still not even allow volunteers to show up on campus. They may only allow volunteers to do Zoom conferences. These are things that are school specific. Private schools will differ. Private schools, same thing though. They will have and they will have different policies and procedures but most schools actually require parents to execute an authorization form. So forms are still out there. You just have to be really cognizant of your school's policy. Any questions on that? I know that doesn't answer some of the hot topic questions that we've had in the last year, but this is an update to that, which is not much of an update. Okay, I'm gonna move on real quick. Best practices, key takeaways, all right, from today. Provide an environment for youth to grow and become productive adults. Recognize, address abuse and harassment. Never be alone with a child. Be aware of local policies such as DOE, etc. Encourage volunteering, but we want to scrutinize those volunteers. We want to make sure that we vet through those volunteers. Be an example, right? No profanity, no use of offensive behavior, languages. Smoking is another thing, or vaping is another thing. If that's what you do, just hold off until after the event. We want to be good examples. Conduct a risk analysis for every activity. Ask yourself, is hugging or giving a kiss appropriate? Or is handshake or knuckles a better choice? Okay, take a look again at the Rotary district5000.org site. That's a link to it. We'll make sure that you folks all have that, but that's our policies and forms. Our policies and forms are all on that D5000.org website. Any best practices you like to share? I know we're kind of running here on time. It's 9:53, but anyone wants to call anything out? No?
Peter,
comment? Bob had written something in the chat, which I wanted to point out that is really important. In the past 5 years, the environment and the climate with students have changed a lot. So in addition to protecting students, the Rotarians really have to watch out for themselves as well. You know? Absolutely, absolutely. And that's a great point. And that comes back to our risk management, our reputation. We talk about protecting the youth, but part of the risk management process is to protect ourselves. We need to protect our brand. We need to protect ourselves as well. So the way to do that is to follow proper risk management techniques. Take a look, be smart about what we do. We are a very, very intellectual group. We have smart people around us that know and have a lot of experience. We just have to do the right thing.
and we have to look out for each other. And that's a main thing, you know. If we see somebody kind of deviating from some of the plans or policies, we should not be bashful or ashamed of calling that out. And it's not so much policing each other, but it's catching each other. We're all here for a reason. We're all volunteers. We don't get paid for what we do, but what we're here for is exactly what Rotary stands for, you know. And we will be doing a disservice if we allow things to occur to our fellow Rotarians. So great point. Thank you for that. I know
Peter,
we
this
had- Go
is
ahead.
Alan again. Real quick, one of the good things that I think we did and they do in RILA is that they do a self-assessment for each student that attends, and they talk about their allergies or physical handicaps or medication they need to take, or
Yep.
things like that. And that
Yep,
prevents
absolutely.
a lot of problems.
Absolutely. So it's knowing your audience, knowing your students, and that is all part of the risk management process. If you're going to go ahead and serve snacks, we had one where a participant didn't eat meat. She was vegan. It's not a safety issue, but we were kind of mindful of that. You know, we didn't want to leave her behind. So, you know, understanding who our people are, who our students are, plays a big role on the planning process. Thanks for that, Alan.
Hey,
All right.
Peter, we got 6 minutes more. We got a bunch of questions.
Yep. So appendix 8. Sorry, I'm seeing it as a B. My eyes are bad. Take a look at this, folks. This is your compliance statement. This is on the website. If you go on to the policy manual, this will force you to go and look at our policy manual, all right? District 5000 policy manual revised May 16th. You can find that at District 5000 website. You can even find it online if you Google it. But go ahead and fill this out, take a look at it, make sure that your club is compliant. You being in this training event, one of many training events, will make you compliant, okay? So make sure that you sign off on this. Your club president signs off on this, and your youth services chairperson signs off on that, all right? Questions, anyone? Now, I agreed to take some questions offline on email if you have any. I know I do have the, what do I have? I have the chat room, so I'll definitely follow up with a lot of people. But anybody has anything?
So Peter, on the screen, I have the questions in the chat. If you want to go real quick on some, as many as you can.
Okay, I can't make that bigger. Let's see. Okay, here. How adequately screen participants? You know, like I said, going through the vetting process, there is a great roadmap on the district or the Rotary Youth Protection Guide. If you have any other questions, or if you want to be a little bit more stringent, please give me a call. We can help you through that. Who would be the proper district level leader besides a YPO? That would be Ryan Char. He heads our youth protection. You guys all know him, youth services, all the way up to the district governor. What does Hawaii state law say about reporting? I can't answer that because I don't have that information. I'll make sure that I find that out. I don't know if there's any state law on reporting. In emergency, first call should be to 911. Absolutely. If there's an emergency, call 911, but you also want to get all the facts as well. 911 will be better equipped to take care of the scenario once they understand how severe the emergency is. If Rotary Youth Service Chair is a DOE administrator, does she need to get a background check? Absolutely. We still want to keep the standardized background check through IntelliCorp, so please. If you are a classroom with a teacher, do you need a background check? Yes. I've recently conducted a background check. Do I still need to? If you have recently conducted a background check through Rotary on the IntelliCorp website, no, but if it's through any other organization, yes. What about those that participate in reading in kindergarten programs? The teacher is always present. Do Rotary still have to do a background check? You know, that's kind of a funky one. If you are always going to be with a volunteering for an event like that, I would say definitely yes. It states it on a manual that everyone conducting Rotary business with youth has to go through a background check. I would say yes. The teacher is always present. The teacher is not part of our Rotary Club. They are there as a liaison between the state and the school, but not part of Rotary. So we still want to make sure that we go through a background check. Background check is valid for 2 years. The definition of youth ends at 18. 18 is an adult, actually. Yeah, so 18 is an adult. Youth is 17. Current and retired DOE employees have been vetted through active teaching as substitutes. Yes, still need to go through background checks. If volunteers have background checks, there should always be 2 adults present, never one alone with a minor. That is up to your club if you decide that you feel that you need to, but if you do have a background check, you are able to work with a minor one-on-one. But you got to be smart about it. Now, if you're in a classroom setting with a child, you just have to be real smart. You know, do I want the teacher? Do I want the advisor with me? More than likely, yes. You got to take a look at yourself and protect yourself as well. I assume club can develop procedures and run them by the district to assure compliance. I haven't read the document, but a second issue is to protect the Rotary volunteers. 2 Rotarians should also be around for Rotarian protection as well. Absolutely, totally agree with that. The more stringent our policies are, the better, right? Can a club require background checks for all members? That's up to the club, you know, absolutely. One of the drawbacks to that is expenditure. It is expensive. It's $20, $19. So if a club is willing to vet all their members, absolutely. And you got to remember that it's a sustainable thing where you have to do it every 2 years. Pretty sure the DOE has a ratio for adult supervision. So if it is an interact program, so it depends on the school itself. I brought that question up to Mark Behrens, the head of security for DOE. He did not, he referred me back to the website and the code of ethics document, code of conduct document, and it does not give a ratio. Wendy, if you're ever concerned, a workaround is to call the police department and ask them to do a background check. They cannot tell you the record, but they're usually willing to answer this question. Would you allow this volunteer person to volunteer in my teen program? They can give you a yes or no regarding background checks. They can always tell you why. So that is up to the individual clubs. I'm not going to tell you folks what to do. There may be some legality problems for that, and that's a Del Green answer or question to ask. I do know that if you go through a reference check, you're in, basically you are, the person that you're doing the reference check for is in agreement to it. Now, if you do an HPD background check, hey, let me ask, you know, call up HPD. I don't know if that infringes upon anything. I am not legal to answer that, but I want you to be very careful in what you do. Especially if we have a lot of people that say, hey, I'm gonna go on Facebook and go ahead and see how this person, what this person does. That may be kind of, I don't want to say crossing the line. I know you have all good intentions, but we also want to protect our ourselves as well. So that will be a follow-up question. Now I'll tap Del on that.
Okay.
Anybody else? I see school employees are usually required to have full background checks that are more stringent. Absolutely. I have a, for me here in the government, I have a classified clearance. I still have to go through IntelliCorp for my background check. Absolutely. And we want to keep it standardized only because we don't want to just open it up to everyone. I understand that some places are more stringent than others, but we want to make sure that we keep a standardized method of background checks across our organization.
Okay, thank you, Peter. We need to get to the HRYF Zoom, but Ryan, everybody give Peter a hand.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, folks, for all you do. I'm 4 minutes past. I'm so sorry.
And Ryan, did you have any half-second message, Ryan?
No, I don't. Again, thank you all. It's here to protect yourselves, your clubs, youth, everyone involved. And so it's a super important topic. So I'm thankful for joining us today. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Take care.